such a lot of material that we'd love to get through. We just don't have time to get through all of it. We know that you're here because you're concerned about having the right people at your board table. Obviously, if you don't have the right people, you can't be effective in governance any more than if the CEO doesn't have the right people in the operational side of the organization, you can't get effective results for the organization. We know that some boards are working really hard at this, some are experiencing real challenges, and we just want to wade in at least at a cursory level to start the conversation. With that, you'll see on the screen that there is a QR code, and that QR code is linking to something called Mentimeter, which is a series of questions that you'll be asked to answer. I think, what is it, Rose? We've got the first three questions.
The first three questions, yes.
So if you can go to Mentimeter, to menti.com, enter 8423803, or use the QR code. That'll get you there even faster. And we invite you to answer those first three questions. We welcome you. My name is Richard Stringham. I'm a senior consultant and partner at the Governance Coach.
I'm really happy to be here. And so what we're seeing obviously online here is that there's a bit of a mix of how your board is formed. So some of you have got board members that are appointed, and some of you are elected by the general membership, and others are a mix. And so that's really helpful. I think regardless of how board members come to your board, you will find this webinar will provide you some useful information. So we also asked you, on a scale of 0 to 5, how successful your board is at recruiting right fit board members. So we see some kind of movement to the left here, which is 1, 2, and 3, and that's perhaps the reason that you've actually come to this webinar. I think this webinar is designed for enhance your capacity to find right fit board members. One of the things that we have learned over time is that sustaining board leadership is about more than just filling chairs. And it's certainly more than just deciding the week before the terms of members end that you need to do something about recruiting members, or, oh yeah, we need to get those nominations in. It really is a proactive process that you need to have to be carefully designing the way in which you think about how are we going to recruit new leadership for our board. And if you do that in a way that's proactive, that isn't just kind of the week before, the month before, that it's an ongoing part of the work that your board does, what you will end up with is fit for purpose leadership. So what do we mean by that? I like the way that this is characterized. It was actually in a long article I read, Cooper's Lybrand and Price Waterhouse, probably reversed there, talked about how you find fit for purpose board leadership. And that meant about how is it you find directors that are fit with the changing context in which your organization operates, that there's also a fit with the desired board culture. So if you're a collaborative board, you're a really strong team orientation, you have a strong tolerance for ambiguity and for large discussions and learning. You want to be recruiting to think about someone who's going to fit with that culture. You also want to be thinking about the fit with performance expectations that you have of board members. So this idea of being proactive, of having a disciplined process, enables you to, in fact, deliver on that fit for purpose. First step then is to identify what. You're going to identify what? Well, identify what your board needs. So the first thing is to think about what competencies are you looking for? Are you looking for individuals who have industry or domain expertise? Are you looking for individuals who maybe have some board experience? And particularly if you're operating or using policy governance as a system of governing, you might be looking for that kind of experience. You also want to be looking for perspectives. So individuals who bring, have some financial literacy that they can contribute, or perspectives because they've been members of the community for a long time. But I think the other thing that you want to recruit for in terms of competencies is competencies suitable for the role of governing. That you're looking for big picture thinkers, for individuals who are able to think in systems and see the connections of things, and who stay future oriented, who aren't mired in today and wanting to look inside the organization, but rather wanting to, lift their eyes above the horizon. You also want to think about what character you're looking for in directors. So, as we talked about before, maybe you're looking for team players. You're looking for individuals who are, self-aware, who are willing to learn and are good learners, right? That they're interested, that they'll dig into the issues that your organization is facing, or they'll learn more about the governing system that you're using. You also want them to have moral courage, the ability to make the right decision at the right time and not just go with the flow. You also want to think about the diversity on your board. Do you have the mix of, gender, age, ethnicity, ability, disability that you want to be part of your board? And so you think about that as an attribute that you're looking for. And then finally, you're looking for commitment, a willingness to connect and understand the range and intensity of values of the population or the members that you're governing on behalf of. Individuals who are willing to be, servant leaders and recognize that their role on the board is not to have all the answers. And also a willingness to devote the time that's necessary to prepare for and fulfill the role of a board member. And I think the way that we think about this is if you don't have commitment, the other things don't really matter. So next, step 2 is to identify who and then recruit. And so you're looking for, who do you know? First, you develop a matrix. So thinking about this as a way of, the what you've been recruiting for, the attributes that are desirable for you, that sort of competencies, the character, the commitment, mix in there, and having a way of looking at different candidates and seeing how they fit with those attributes. So you're not just relying on the memory of someone who talked to that person and said, yeah, I think that was a good fit and they did this and that. This gives you a more, if you will, disciplined approach to it, a more proactive way, discerning among the members or the potential candidates that you have. And then you can think about people people that you come in contact with in your professional sphere, or people that you know in your neighborhood, in your community, individuals that you've met at a conference, perhaps. You also want to tap into your networks and thinking about tapping into your networks and your friends' networks and other people's networks so that you broaden the range of possible recruited directors. However, others identify members for you, right? So you don't, as a board, aren't able to go out and directly recruit. And what you've got are individuals who maybe self-identify, who say, you know what, I've always been interested in this. I think I'd be a great board member. I'm going to put myself up as a candidate. You also, in membership organizations, and I think a number of you here today are part of a membership organization, you're going to have a process where members nominate potential candidates for the board. You also, as we saw, have members that are appointed or board members appointed by an external party. In this instance, where others are identified candidates for you, what you want to do is make sure that they know that desired attribute. So that list on the left-hand column in that matrix, you want to let them know that. How do we do that? It's like, we have an office of public appointments, or our members are spread across the country, but you need to think about that. Remember, this is a proactive, disciplined, carefully designed system for recruiting, and you can't rely on them, reading your mind. And if you don't make that effort to let them know what you're looking for, then you'll get the board member you deserve. So harsh, but unfortunately accurate. We have a tool that you might be interested in. That matrix was just a small sample of the Best Fit More Member Matrix. All right, which is a great tool for your use in recruiting board members. There's a real comprehensive list of characteristics that you might consider. It lets you customize and prioritize those characteristics gives you tools to make it easier to compare possible new members. It's available in a downloadable format. In the next sort of 24 to 48 hours, you will get an email from us, which will have an excerpt from that document. So you can kind of take a look at it and see whether or not it's something that you think will help your board in recruiting and sustaining its leadership. Wow. So we are looking at a really wide range of attributes that you're looking for. So you've obviously been doing some thinking with this already. So I'm seeing we're looking for critical thinking. We're looking for expertise, for leadership skills, for financial literacy, for teamwork. And so this is a really great start in terms of what you want to be looking for. So I think you're well on your way.
You know, one of the things that strikes me, Rose, is some things we can train for. And it's an age-old thing that when I'm hiring, first thing I look for is attitude. Do you really want to work? Do you really want to apply? Are you aligned with the mission? That's really hard to train for. But there are certain skills that we can train for. Governance is actually one of them, if someone's got the attitude that they're willing to learn. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about a situation where you might know people, either directly or through your network. You might know about potential candidates. And really, when it comes down to recruiting, the ideal is that you have a one-to-one contact if you're trying to recruit people into the organization. So let's try this. Rose, I'm with the library board, and we have a vacant seat that we need to fill. It's, you know, it's a great board to work with, and we really think you'd be a really good fit with our board. We're such a good group to work with. You know, in fact, this is the first vacancy we've had in the last 4 years. And the only reason we have this vacancy is because this person is moving away from the area, so she no longer qualifies. But you know, we think that you'd be really good to work with, and it'd be really wonderful to have you on the board. Can I interest you in standing for nomination?
Gosh, I'm not sure about that, Richard. I'm on 2 other boards already, and they take up quite a bit of time. And even though I love using the library, I don't know. I need to think about it. Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right. Let's try that again. Hi, Rose. I'm with the nominating committee from our library board. And although you and I haven't met, we've been having some conversations with a few people who know you and gave us some insight into qualities that you could bring to a board. So just to give you a bit of understanding about what we're looking for, we're thinking about someone who's really future oriented, who is not predicting the future and not even trying to predict the future, but really trying to understand potential futures and particularly the impact that would have on the people the organization is trying to serve. When we talked to the folks at the food bank, where you're currently a board member, they were impressed by both your imagination to be able to think about the future, but the way that you were able to build on the imagination of others at the board table, and you know, to really stretch the thinking that the board members had, because obviously things at the food bank, there's a lot of future challenges coming up, not only those that are in place right now. We're also looking for someone who has the real courage to stand up and really bring their point home when it needs to happen. And sometimes that's in the face of everyone else being on a different page. They didn't give us details, but they mentioned that there was a debate about should the food bank be focused on nutritional quality versus quantity, and you know, that you were in a different place to start with, and that you opened up the conversation because you were ready to really engage with others. And then finally, it's really important that we have someone that's open to learning. And folks at the food bank said that you have, well, they described it as an insatiable curiosity, where you are really wanting to understand both how things operate, at the board, but also beyond the organization itself, what's going on with the people that you want to benefit. So to better understand our board, we meet once a month, second Tuesday evening of each month for 2.5 hours. We're really good at staying on time, but it takes more time than that, as you probably know, sitting on a board. On average, what we find is that our members say it takes about 8 hours a month on average between the board meeting itself, probably a committee that they serve on, and just preparation time. Getting out and linking with our ownership is an important part of things too. We certainly look for that. We're concerned that people are available to experience the training, because we use a particular system of governance called policy governance. And if it comes down to thinking about how this really brings benefit to the community, we are an important part of our community. And we are really working hard to stay relevant. And we think that that would probably be important to you, because we understand that you are really linked into your community. Is this something that would be of interest to you, if you have the opportunity?
Yeah, interesting enough, my term with the food bank is actually coming up, and I have been thinking of stepping off the board, and some of that's I've been there for 6 years now, and I think I'm flattered by what you've heard. We've made some significant changes, and I think it's I've made a really good contribution to them, and so I really love living in this community, and I'm a really strong believer in the importance of libraries. So yeah, I'd be willing to think about this pretty seriously.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Well, we have our next nominating committee meeting a week from Tuesday. Do you think I could get an answer from you by that time?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Wonderful. Okay. All right. Let's just for a moment think about what was different there. We talked more specifically about how this person fits with what the organization is looking for. We got more specific about jobs. I didn't even mention jobs in the first take. But so often we hear boards try to recruit saying, it doesn't take any time. And we all know it does. If you're sitting on a board, it's a job. It's an important responsibility. And thinking about what would be thought of as a benefit from that person's perspective. You can't always get that right. You have to spend a bit of time really trying to understand the person. In a perfect world, we would have had a conversation rather than me kind of running through those three things. Time didn't permit it for this webinar, but hopefully you get the drift of how that would make your chances of success that much greater, because the more specific we can be in linking that person to what we're looking for and helping them to understand that we genuinely have looked into who they are, what they're about, then we're more likely to get success. We're also more likely, just doing that homework, to be able to weed out the people that really aren't going to be a good fit. By the way, we have another tool that works for this. This is our Best Fit Board Builder, and it includes a bank of interview questions which are linked to the attributes that you'd be looking for on the board. And then along with that, there are some suggestions about the types of responses that you would expect and what that tells you about that person's suitability for being on your board. And again, we'll send you an excerpt of that following the webinar. Okay, third step. We'll run through this very quickly, but it's an important one, and it's one that oftentimes we see boards dropping the ball on this one. I am a member of a very large nonprofit association, and annually I get a request from them to vote on a slate of candidates that they put forward. I have no clue who these people are because it's a very large organization. But on top of that, I have no clue from the information they provide, which is things like, you know, what's their professional or business background, what are they doing in the community, etc. I still have no clue as to how that aligns with what the board is looking for. And if I'm going to make a responsible choice as a voter, that's a shame. Now, not everyone cares about that. Not everyone is going to take the time for that. But for some of us, particularly those who end up voting, if we don't know the person, we need some information to make that connection. So here's one way that an organization I was working with, that we did it in this organization. We put a newsletter out where we gave information about the candidates, but the information was tied back to questions that we posed to the candidates. So as you see on the screen, we had a preamble in this piece that said the board operating as a whole recognizes its primary accountability to, in this case, it was the public as the ownership. Consequently, the board seeks to understand and bring the values of the broad ownership into the board's decisions. Okay, that was the preamble. Then we had the question, what do you see as the challenges of understanding the broad and diverse views of our organization's ownership? Each candidate was asked to briefly respond to that question. And then we published their brief responses in that newsletter. Second question that you see there, the same process. We had a total of about 5, maybe 6 questions in total, picking out the areas that we were most concerned about. What was kind of, as a quick aside, what was interesting was that one of the candidates came back and said, answering those questions really helped me to better understand what you're expecting of me being on the board, which was kind of a nice side benefit. I'll put it that way. Okay, we are into Q&A time, so we invite you to post your questions in the question and answer area.
Not seeing any questions just yet. I think one of the things that often asked these days is around, how do we get younger board members? We're having a hard time. We have, people, a lot of baby boomers on our board, and we're really looking to kind of diversify from a point of age. And I think that's a really common question, but it goes back to thinking about 2 things. One is being clear about the attributes that you're looking for and being able to talk about the job in terms of the benefits that it offers, but talk about those in terms that might be attractive younger potential board members. And then also thinking about what are the other networks where we might find individuals who are younger in age. There's a lot to learn, I think, about what different generations offer to boards, but they don't see them the same necessarily. It was Richard or I who might be serving on a board. So I think that's really reinforces that importance. So I am seeing a couple of questions.
How do you assign the number to diversify or for diversity in your matrix? A starting point on all of these is really where you're at right now with your board. If your board is composed of older, white-haired Caucasian males like myself, you've got a lot of work to do on diversity. On the other hand, if you have a really good mix, for example, of male-female, but we don't have much in the way of ethnicity that's represented in the community that you're coming from, then you need to think about it from that perspective. So it really comes down to somewhat subjective take on it. But the key here is that you're reaching out to bring in someone that helps you to probably better connect with. Often a misunderstanding that if we bring in someone from a different background, that person, quote, represents all the people in that background. And I think that's a bit of a fallacy. But that person can help you link to people with that background to better understand questions that you need to be asking.
Next question is, our board struggles with the rubrics and the scoring written responses. You already have our book, you're still working through it. I think one of the things in terms of when you start to try and use like a 0 to 5 kind of question is not not to rely on kind of your gut response to that, but to think about, okay, if as a committee we wrote this, what would be the best possible answer someone could give us? And have that in your mind to say, okay, that would be 5. What is the worst possible answer we could get? And that would be 0. And maybe think about potential, right? Potential answers that you might be looking for in that sort of 0 to 5. As Richard said, I mean, it is to some degree subjective, but I think if you think ahead of time about what you ideally want to be hearing, it can give you some idea of what the 5 is, and what you really hope you don't hear would give you an idea of 0, and then it might be just, kind of going in between. But at least if you think about those two ends, it might give you a bit of an idea of how to use the rubrics. So we have one more question. We have a few more questions. Let's take the next one, and then maybe we might have to write answers to them in the follow-up.
Okay. All right. Rose, you can help me answer this. If our board is locally elected school board, we are restricted from influencing the community on how they vote. However, I believe we can be involved in doing some recruitment and tapping. Could you perhaps elaborate on this scenario? Really interesting from that perspective. There's a sort of spectrum, if you will, where we go from absolutely saying nothing to the voters, through to situations where some boards just put forward a slate of recommended candidates. Depending on the organization, some are more prone to one side of that than to the other. I think, number one, it's probably more palatable if we are simply saying what we are looking for and try to get people to speak for themselves when they step up to do that. Not that you're saying vote for candidate X, it's that you would be saying, here's what we're looking for on the school board. Here are some questions that we've asked of candidates, and we're putting that out for you to decide. We're not, trying to influence you as to which person. And sometimes external authorities don't allow even that. If you're in that place, certainly if you have the opportunity to tap people on the shoulder and ask them, again, going back to what Rose talked about, and I think it's important to emphasize here, while we put this in order of 3 steps, you may have to change the order of things to suit your situation. Going out and using your network to find appropriate candidates is probably the answer for this piece. Rose, anything that you would add?
No, and I think that is often a really challenging situation where you've got publicly elected members. I think, just even having current board members speaking with other potential candidates, knowing that, they can decide to, offer themselves up for election or not. But I think that's a way to do that. And then I think hard about, okay, we need to do a really good job in the onboarding process, which is, a whole different subject, but it's thinking about when someone comes to the board, how do you, in fact, if you will, integrate them into the working board? But I said that's a subject for another day. So there are lots of really good questions here, but I am looking at the time, and I think we can make a commitment, can't we, Richard, to providing written answers to these questions, and we will send them out that follow-up email of that, because a lot of these we could spend half an hour on.
Takeaways. So we invite you to tell us what your main takeaway is from today's session. And again, that should be in Mentimeter.
And if you go back to, if you happen to have lost it, it was menti.com, and it was 8423803. So that's 8423803.
There we go.
Oh,
we did get
well, there we are. Excellent. All right.
Yeah,
Yes.
intentional.
Yeah, really important and disciplined. So specifics, proactive. So we're really, really glad to see those messages, because I think those are really part of the message, if you will, that we're trying to convey, is the importance of being intentional, of not leaving it to the last minute, of taking some discipline, and it should be an ongoing part of the work that your board is doing. We would invite you as well, if you're thinking about how do we develop a fit for purpose board, and you want to chat with one of our consultants, you can book a discovery call on our web site. It's free. There's no obligation. There's no pressure. And sometimes it's just helpful to kind of have a chat with someone and see if you're heading in the right direction, or maybe there's some way that we can support you in that work and see if we're a good fit. We'd invite you to do that, and really have appreciated you being here today. So I think, Richard, you're going to deal with some of the key messages.
To wrap things up, what we hoped we could get across here was that when you're looking at recruiting, especially if you're recruiting for a policy governance board, you're going to find that the attributes you look for are not necessarily the same as those you would look for in a more traditional approach on governance. More traditional approach on governance is thinking about management as one step up. And policy governance, we think about governance as being ownership one step down. And that has a significant difference in terms of what you are looking for the people who are going to sit on the board. Also, remember that those specifics, the more homework we do, the better we are at pulling out specifics and presenting those to the audience, especially when we're trying to recruit somebody. Making sure that the decision makers understand as much as you are allowed to. And I appreciate the comment from the person that wrote about the school board restrictions on that. As much as you're allowed to, but also recognize that it's probably most important to present the what you are looking for and how that person aligns, rather than saying, this is who we are pushing in terms of a candidate. People have pointed out this does take work. It means preparing, etc. I've had some people say at the end of a session where we go through this, they say, oh, it just sounds like so much work. Yes, it does. At the same time, the results make that worth it. So with that, thank you so much for being here. And we will, as we've said, get information to you as follow-up. And we look forward to connecting with you next time.